When did two new people destroy your 20-year career? Okay, I am typing this out from my beat-up 2018 Honda Civic in the parking lot of the Trader Joe's because I cannot go home right now. And honestly, if I don't write this all down, I think my brain is going to literally short-circuit. This is the betrayal story I never thought I would be the main character in, and trust me when I say the sheer audacity of some people is just astonishing. So I just found out that my entire professional reputation, the one I spent 20 years meticulously building while also juggling caring for my elderly mother, is about to be completely nuked because of two people I literally met 3 months ago during a corporate restructuring project. And the worst part, the entire fiasco revolves around a failed background check, which is the kind of drama I thought only happened on a Hulu show, not in real life. I mean NGL, I'm shaking so hard right now I almost spilled my gas station coffee all over the passenger seat. Let me back up. For context, I am Christian Flores, 43M. My life is basically a low-budget indie film about the joys of being a sandwich generation caregiver. I work remotely for a large tech consulting firm, we'll call it Apex, which sounds fancier than it is. I primarily manage compliance, which means my days are spent wading through spreadsheets, trying to figure out why the $347 bill for new security software suddenly tripled, and making sure everyone is following the letter of the law. My mom lives with me in apartment 3B, and dealing with her medications and appointments usually means I'm up by 5:30 a.m. and rarely off the clock before 9:00 p.m. I don't have time for drama. I truly don't. Apex decided we needed a massive overhaul of our client intake protocols. This was a huge, high-stakes project. If we messed this up, we would lose the lucrative state contract that essentially funds half our department. My boss, Greg, put me in charge of the compliance task force. Because I am 43 and generally competent and reliable, boring and predictable, I was supposed to be the anchor. Then came the team. Oh God, the team. First, there was Marie Fitzgerald, 21F. Marie was introduced to us as a new hire, a real go-getter, fresh out of university, top of her class. Charismatic doesn't even begin to cover it. She was like a living, breathing TikTok influencer who somehow ended up in corporate compliance. She always wore impossibly chic clothes, carried a designer tote bag, and ordered some insanely complicated, expensive concoction from Starbucks every morning, usually a venti iced brown sugar shaken espresso with extra foam and 4 pumps vanilla, which cost like $7 every time. She was bright, focused, and totally disarming. She'd smile, and I swear every male colleague over the age of 30 immediately forgot why they were in the meeting. I saw people who never spoke in meetings suddenly stammering compliments about her slide decks. Then there was Thomas Murphy, 68M. Thomas was the wildcard. He was technically semi-retired, brought on as a special consultant for digital outreach and modern media strategy, whatever that means. Thomas looked like a grandpa, smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and stale energy drinks, and never showed his face on Zoom. In GL, I assumed he was just some old guy they hired to give a semblance of diversity. But Thomas was apparently a semi-famous Twitch streamer on the side, specializing in retro video game commentary. He was known online as Old Man Gamer 68. His followers loved him. I found his channel once when I was trying to figure out why his internet usage was so astronomical. He was streaming live at 11:47 a.m. on a Tuesday while claiming he was in deep research. His voice was deep and gravelly, perfect for late-night streaming. My initial thought was, how in the hell am I supposed to manage a Gen Z social media darling and a 68-year-old Twitch streamer on a high-stakes compliance project? But honestly, I was too stressed dealing with mom's $85 emergency plumber charge last week and the rising cost of her medication to micromanage. I just needed them to hit their deadlines, and for the first 2 months they were stellar. Seriously. Marie managed the data migration like a professional. She had these incredible insights into user experience. Thomas, despite his constant rambling about the differences between the SNES and the Sega Genesis, was shockingly adept at analyzing data trends. We were crushing it. Greg even gave us a bonus for hitting the 2-month milestone, which was only $200, but still I needed that for the electric bill. I started trusting them implicitly. Too much, apparently. The complication arose because of the nature of the project. We were handling highly sensitive client data, financial, medical, you name it. Standard procedure mandated that everyone on the task force, even consultants like Thomas and temporary hires like Marie, had to pass an enhanced security screening and a full FBI-level background check. This was non-negotiable. I submitted all their paperwork back in late September. About 2 weeks ago, I started getting weird emails from HR. Not outright denials, but cryptic messages asking for clarification regarding certain residential records for Marie and further documentation regarding historical employment for Thomas. I brought it up in a private Slack channel with Marie. I texted her, "Hey Marie, HR is being weird about your background info. Everything okay with the addresses you provided?" She replied back immediately. She always uses the full keyboard caps lock. It's annoying. "Yes, Christian, everything is fine. HR is just so slow. LOL. I moved a lot after graduation. Maybe THATS it. I will call them ASAP." She sounded breezy. Too breezy maybe, but I dismissed it. I was worried about my mom falling down the stairs. She almost did on Friday. I had to replace the rug, and trying to afford this month's $1,247 rent on my own, plus the $43.67 grocery bill at Costco that was suddenly way over budget. I didn't have the emotional bandwidth for HR drama. Then the Thomas situation got weirder. His historical employment records were, according to HR, incomplete and contradictory. I asked him about it on a quick Zoom call. Thomas, they're asking about the 6 years you apparently spent working for Global Data Solutions in London. They need documentation, I said, trying to sound professional but gentle. Thomas, 68M, who was definitely eating crunchy snacks off camera, cleared his throat. Oh, that old chestnut. Look, Christian, when you're 68, records get dusty, you know. It was a highly specialized proprietary consulting gig. They don't just keep those paper trails lying around. Tell them to try again, it's fine. He kept insisting it was fine, but the corporate anxiety was tightening my chest, making it feel like I couldn't properly inhale. I needed this project to go perfectly. I started digging myself. I know I shouldn't have. I have access to the internal tracking system for these screenings. I used my privileged login on my work laptop, the one with the cracked screen I keep meaning to replace, on Tuesday at 11:47 a.m., right when Thomas was supposed to be in a meeting but was mysteriously offline. I pulled up the report. It was marked red, the highest alert level. Marie Fitzgerald's 21F file. The screening failed because she had provided a false social security number and multiple addresses that traced back to vacant properties or short-term rentals, essentially creating a paper ghost. The report stated, subject's identity is currently unverifiable, likely using fraudulent documentation to secure employment. My jaw literally dropped, like cartoon character style. I felt the blood drain from my face. I was staring at the screen, heart racing so fast it felt like it was going to burst right out of my chest, pumping panic instead of blood. Marie, charismatic, Starbucks-drinking, brilliant Marie, she was a fraud, and then I clicked on Thomas Murphy's 68M file. His was even worse, it wasn't just incomplete. The system flagged him immediately. The report stated that the 6 years he claimed to be working in Global Data Solutions in London corresponded exactly to time he served in a federal correctional institution in New Jersey for wire fraud related to offshore investments. I swear my vision went blurry. I had to physically put my head down on the cold surface of my IKEA desk. I was breathing so rapidly I felt dizzy. I wanted to throw up my leftover pizza from last night. 2 months. 2 months of relying on a convicted felon and an identity fraudster to handle top-level corporate compliance. I saw everything: my job, my promotion potential, the stability I provided for my mom just dissolving into thin air. I knew I couldn't confront them yet. I needed evidence, documentation. I quickly screenshotted the internal reports with my iPhone 14, which is almost out of storage because of the thousands of pictures of my cat, saved them to a private cloud folder and deleted the history. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. I sat there frozen for a good 20 minutes trying to figure out if this was a deeply elaborate joke or if I was having a stress-induced breakdown. I mean, NGL, I've had some pretty intense emotional reactions lately. The stress acne is out of control. I managed to get through the rest of the day by just nodding mutely in my Zoom meetings and pretending I hadn't just discovered I was working with 2 corporate criminals. I was running on pure adrenaline and rage. The rage was intense. I wanted to key Thomas's beat-up Toyota Corolla, which I saw him driving once, and text Marie's mom the truth. That night, I didn't sleep. I just binge-watched bad reality TV on Netflix and drank 2 liters of ginger ale. Around 4:00 a.m., I started scrolling through Marie's Instagram. It was perfectly curated, full of aspirational photos of her drinking Talenti gelato and doing yoga. But I noticed something weird. None of the pictures were current. They were all either very old or taken against vague, non-identifiable backgrounds. She hadn't posted a real-time story in weeks. Then I checked Thomas's Twitch channel. He was live. Old Man Gamer 68 was playing some ancient platformer, but in the chat, people were asking if he was getting ready for his big move. I called my only real friend left, Sarah 42F, who works in the accounting department. I knew she'd be awake. She's got insomnia almost as bad as mine. Sarah, I whispered into the phone, walking out onto my fire escape so I wouldn't wake Mom. You need to listen to me and not freak out. I told her everything: the red flags, the failed background checks, the wire fraud conviction for Thomas, the ghost identity for Marie. There was silence on the other end, then Sarah yelled, "Girl, what the fuck? Are you serious? Are you absolutely serious, Christian?" I wish I wasn't, I choked out. I felt the sting of tears, but I held them back. I was done crying. I was just done. So Thomas, the old guy, is a convict, and Marie is literally an identity thief. What are they even doing here? Why are they working so hard on the project if they knew they'd fail the screening? That's what I don't get, I said, wiping my sweaty palms on my ancient sweatpants. They knew this check was mandatory. They were brought on specifically for this high-security project. They must have had a plan. Sarah said, "You need to take this to Greg immediately, like right now, before they destroy the client data or something worse. You cannot cover this, Christian." I know, I said. "But Sarah, if this goes public right now, I'm toast. I put my name on the line for this team. I'm the manager. I vouch for their competence to the board." "Honey, you were gaslighted by a professional criminal and a young woman using a fake life story. Don't be the martyr. Report it today." The next morning, I went to the office, not the remote office, but the physical headquarters on the 5th floor. I scheduled an emergency meeting with Greg. I printed out the internal HR reports, put them in a pristine manila folder, and rehearsed my explanation 50 times in the elevator mirror. When I sat down, Greg looked harried. He was already stressed about the upcoming audit. "Christian, make it quick. I have 8 back-to-back Zoom meetings today," he said, tapping his Apple Watch impatiently. I placed the folder on his desk. "Greg, I have some extremely disturbing information regarding the compliance task force, specifically Marie Fitzgerald and Thomas Murphy." I waited for his reaction as he opened the folder and saw the red warning label. He scanned the first page about Marie, the fraudulent documents, the ghost identity. His face went pale. "What is this, Christian? Did you hack the HR system?" he hissed, which was classic Greg, immediately blaming me for finding the problem. No, sir. I used my credentials to review the failed background reports after HR flagged them to me. I was following up. He flipped to the second page about Thomas, the wire fraud conviction, the time served. He didn't say anything for a full minute, just stared. Then he looked up at me, eyes wide. Christian, this is bad. This is catastrophically bad. If this leaks, we lose the contract. We lose everything. Did you tell anyone? Only Sarah, and I swore her to silence. I came straight to you. He leaned back in his leather chair. The silence was heavy. I could hear the faint sound of pop music leaking from someone's AirPods down the hall. Okay, Greg said, suddenly calm, too calm. We need to handle this quietly. We pull them off the project. We cite unforeseen resource reallocation. We minimize the damage. I'll handle HR. You contact Marie and Thomas and tell them they're off the task force effective immediately, pending an internal investigation. I felt a slight sense of relief. At least I wasn't fired yet. Understood. I'll call them right now. I went back to my cubicle and started dialing Mari's number. She didn't answer. I tried again. She has red receipts on, and I saw the message I sent her a minute ago about the meeting was now marked read. I called Thomas. His phone went straight to voicemail, but his voicemail box was full, probably from the 27 calls HR made to him last week. I tried emailing Marie and Thomas simultaneously, keeping it brief and corporate. Effective immediately, your roles on the Apex Compliance Task Force have been concluded. Do not attempt to access the secure server. Contact HR for next steps. I waited, no reply. I checked the internal security server activity log, which I still had access to. Marie and Thomas had both been logged in at 6:00 a.m. that morning, 3 hours before my meeting with Greg. They had been working in a secured folder that was designated only for the final sensitive data transfer. I clicked on the folder. It was empty. All the months of work, the millions of data points we had compiled for the state contract, the highly confidential client list gone. The folder showed a simple file transfer timestamped at 6:15 a.m. indicating the data had been zipped and transferred offsite. My chest tightened again, worse this time. My lungs seized up. I couldn't breathe. I was literally hyperventilating in my tiny cubicle. They didn't care about the background checks. They weren't trying to pass the background checks. They were trying to stay long enough to finish extracting the data. They played us. They used the high-stakes project as cover. I stumbled back into Greg's office, knocking over a stack of papers. He looked up, annoyed. Christian, what is your problem? I thought I told you to call them. They're gone, I wheezed, pointing back towards the server report on my phone screen. The data, it's gone, Greg. They transferred everything at 6:15 this morning. They were never here for the job. They were here for the data. Greg looked at the phone, then back at me. His face was a horrifying mask of realization and panic. Call security, call the police, call it and lock everything down. Now, Christian, do it now. I ran back to my desk, fumbling for my phone. But before I could dial it, my laptop pinged with a notification. It was a group chat notification from a third-party encrypted messaging app that Thomas had insisted we use for quick and secure communication. The chat included me, Marie, and Thomas. Marie had sent the first message, time-stamped only 5 minutes after I had sent my termination email. Marie 21F, lol, Christian finally figured it out. Took her long enough. Thomas 68M, Christian, I really enjoyed your spreadsheets, very meticulous. Sorry about the wire fraud thing, you know how it is. Marie 21F, don't worry Thomas, the data is safe and the buyers are thrilled. See Christian, sometimes old dogs and new tricks can be really productive. We made $40,000 each on this data dump BTW, thanks for the smooth onboarding. We couldn't have done it without your glowing references. I read the dollar amount. $40,000. They stole our entire project, destroyed my career, and made enough money in 2 months to live comfortably for a year. I was still stressing about the $1,247 rent. I typed back a single furious message, not even thinking about the professionalism I was supposed to embody. I was seeing red. Christian 43M, you are both going to jail. Thomas replied instantly. Thomas 68M, no Christian, only one of us is going to jail. I didn't understand. What was he talking about? Then Marie chimed in. Marie 21F, fun fact Christian, when Greg called us in 3 weeks ago to talk about the minor discrepancies in our background checks, we were already planning the exit. Thomas had a contact that needed someone clean to run the data extraction from the server room. Someone who had full and trusted access. My stomach dropped further than it had when I first read the background checks. My hands started shaking violently again. Christian 43M, what are you saying? Thomas 68M, we realized we wouldn't pass the enhanced security checks needed for the final data transfer phase, so we fabricated a reason for HR to keep us dangling. We knew HR would go straight to the department head. When Greg saw the red flags, he panicked. He didn't want to lose the project, so he decided to quietly leverage his only available, clean resource to finish the job for us. Marie 21F, you know, the one resource who was already vetted and totally dependable. The one resource who was so trusting she'd give up her secure login credentials just to help Thomas remotely with the final upload because his iPad was glitching. Thomas 68M, the one resource who now appears to be the only person logged in during the final data transfer. Christian, you saved us a lot of trouble, friend. Look at the server logs, they're all yours now. I felt like I had been punched directly in the solar plexus. I looked at the security logs on my laptop. It showed that my user profile, Christian Flores 43, was the one who logged in and initiated the massive data transfer at 6:15 a.m. The log showed my corporate IP address from my home office. They didn't just steal the data, they framed me for the theft. They used my good standing, my trust, and my credentials to cover their tracks. My background check was spotless. Thomas, the convict, knew exactly how to make a clean person look dirty. I tried to reply to the chat, but Marie had already done the final damage. Marie 21F BTW Christian, enjoy explaining why you immediately sold company data the second we were fired. That looks incredibly suspicious. Maybe next time don't be such a clown and trust people over 35. LOL. Then they both blocked me. The chat window disappeared. I walked out of the office. I didn't tell Greg. I didn't call security. I was numb. I knew what happened next. Apex would launch an investigation. The internal logs would point squarely at me. The fact that I was the one who initially discovered the background check failure would look like a preemptive defense. They would assume I found out my colleagues were compromised, and then instead of reporting it properly, I teamed up with them, cut them out at the last minute, and tried to steal the whole thing myself. The optics were unbeatable. My career was over. My life savings were about to be drained fighting a corporate lawsuit, and I'd likely be blacklisted from the entire industry. Be lucky if I didn't end up where Thomas served his time. I drove straight to Target just to wander the aisles, thinking about how stupid I was, how pathetic it was that I missed all the red flags because I was too busy paying mom's bills and trying to scrape together the $200 withdrawals to cover the mounting debt. I ended up buying a Talenti gelato, the exact flavor Marie had posted, and sitting in my car trying to think. I can't go to the police yet. I can't tell Greg. They already have the smoking gun pointing at me. I have to prove their connection before they bury me. I only have one chance to fix this. I remember Thomas mentioning something about a big Twitch gaming convention happening this weekend in Chicago. He mentioned his Old Man Gamer 68 fan base was huge and he was doing a meet and greet Saturday night. I pulled out my phone, quickly used my remaining PTO hours, and bought the last-minute flight and a ticket to the Retro Gamer Expo. It cost me $347, which is money I don't have, but whatever. I'm already ruined. I have zero plan, but I know where Thomas Murphy 68M, the wire fraud convict, will be. I need to find Marie too, but I bet Thomas knows where she is. He was the brains behind this whole operation. I'm going to Chicago. I'm going to show up uninvited and confront him in front of his beloved fan base, and I am going to record the entire thing. I need him to slip up. I need him to admit the truth. But here's the final kicker, the thing that has me literally sitting here shaking so badly my phone almost slipped out of my hand. As I was booking the flight, I got a random notification from Venmo. It was a request for $15 from Thomas Murphy 68M. The note attached said, "Forgot to split the cost of the Starbucks this morning. Marie insists we keep the books clean. See you soon, Christian. See you soon." How did he know I was coming? Was I that obvious? Or did they plan for this too? I looked back down at the ticket confirmation on my phone screen. The flight is tomorrow at 7:00 a.m. And then I saw the very next email in my inbox, timestamped only 3 minutes after my flight confirmation. It was a forwarded message from an anonymous account, but the body of the email was pure text, short and terrifying. It was a direct quote from Marie, sent from a burner email, which proved she was tracking my every move. The text simply read, "Christian, if you think showing up at the convention is smart, think again. Your elderly mother's caretaker insurance policy has lapsed, and that is going to be a real problem if you aren't around to manage her medications this weekend. I'd hate for anything to happen to her while you're busy making a scene for Twitch." I'm still sitting in the Trader Joe's parking lot, but now it's 7:30 p.m. and the sun is definitely down and I've eaten the entire pint of Talenti gelato, the caramel cookie crunch. If anyone cares, it was fine. I just read that text from Marie about my mom's insurance policy, and honestly, the sheer level of sociopathic evil on display here is making my head spin. They are not just thieves. They are targeted, deeply messed up predators. I called Sarah immediately, shaking so hard I could barely hit the green call icon on my phone screen. "Sarah, they know I'm going to Chicago, and they threatened Mom." I tried to keep my voice down, but it came out as a desperate, squeaky whisper. Sarah, bless her heart, was instantly hyper-focused. "Wait, they know you booked the flight? How? Did you use your work computer, your Apex email?" "No, I used my personal phone and my personal credit card, but I checked the IP address of the burner email she sent. It was routed through a proxy, obviously, but it was timestamped 3 minutes after the United Airlines confirmation came through," I explained, trying to process the timeline. "They must have access to some kind of mass data surveillance tool, or they bugged my house. I don't know." "Christian, listen to me. This isn't just corporate fraud anymore. This is criminal intimidation and maybe stalking. You have to call the police about the threat against your mother." "Forget the data theft for 1 second, Sarah insisted, her voice tight with fear. The thought of involving the police, of having strangers come to my apartment 3B near the garbage chute, very classy, talking to my fragile mom about insurance and criminals, made my stomach clench. "No, Sarah, if I call the police now, I have to explain why the internal server logs show my ID downloading millions of dollars of client data at 6:15 a.m. this morning. They will arrest me on the spot," I argued. "I need proof that Thomas and Marie did it, and right now the only way to get that proof is to make Thomas talk." "But your mom, Christian, her meds, the insurance," Sarah pleaded. "I know," I said, running a hand through my already messy hair. "I already figured it out. I called the agency. They confirmed the caregiver insurance is fine, but they said Marie had called yesterday asking very detailed questions about the policy lapse period. She was setting the trap. I've hired a short-term vetted certified nurse for the next 3 days, a full 24/7 care service. It cost me $900, which is every dollar I have left in my savings, but Mom is covered. They can't touch her." A wave of pure, cold determination washed over me. They wanted to use my greatest vulnerability, my mom, to stop me. That was their biggest mistake. Now I was operating on a level of rage that transcended professional fear. "So I'm going to Chicago," I finished. I leave tomorrow morning. You keep checking the server logs for me from your desk, Sarah. If Apex fires me, I'll text you the code for the emergency flash drive. Sarah swore again, a stream of truly impressive profanity, and hung up, promising to bring me coffee and a tactical checklist at 5:00 a.m. before I drove to the airport. Fast forward to Friday morning, 6:00 a.m. I am sitting in a ridiculously cramped seat on a Spirit Airlines flight to Chicago, trying to pretend I'm just going on a relaxing weekend trip and not a high-stakes, career-saving, potentially illegal confrontation with a convicted wire fraudster and an identity thief. The flight was bumpy. I hate flying. I hate it even more when I'm running on 4 hours of sleep and stress-eating stale pretzels. I spent the entire flight mentally rehearsing my approach. The plan was ridiculously simple. 1. Locate Thomas Murphy, Old Man Gamer 68, at the Retro Gamer Expo. 2. Find a moment when he is either alone or surrounded by enough fans that he feels safe and performative. 3. Turn on the voice recorder on my iPhone 14, which I finally cleared some storage space on, thank you very much. 4. Confront him and get him to admit that he and Marie fabricated the login story and stole the data, or at least admit he knows Marie's real identity. I knew this was insane. I should have gone to the FBI. But the FBI would take weeks to investigate, and in those weeks, Apex would definitely terminate me, launch a civil suit, and possibly share my profile with federal prosecutors based on the internal logs. I needed to move fast. My reputation was eroding faster than my retirement fund. I land in Chicago, grab the cheapest Uber I could find. The driver kept insisting on listening to 90s slow jams, and head straight to the convention center. The place is exactly what I expected. Dimly lit, smelling faintly of body odor and microwave popcorn filled with middle-aged men wearing graphic tees. I buy an entry ticket, which costs $85, another hit to the bank account. I walk through the convention floor, dodging people dressed as Nintendo characters, feeling incredibly conspicuous in my corporate casual attire, the same khaki pants and navy polo I wore to Greg's office yesterday. Thomas's booth, the glimmering Genesis, was easy to find. It had a massive banner featuring a poorly photoshopped image of him holding an old controller. He was sitting at a folding table, signing autographs for a line of maybe 20 fans. He looked exactly like a retired grandpa, except his energy drink consumption was definitely higher than average. He was wearing a shirt that said, "I paused my game to be here." NGL, the man had branding. I stayed back, hiding behind a massive cardboard cutout of Sonic the Hedgehog. My heart was pounding like a drum solo. I pulled out my phone, went into the voice recording app, and set the screen to look like I was just checking Twitter. I watched Thomas interact with his fans. He was charming, gravelly voiced, and surprisingly good at rapid-fire banter. He was performing, he was a natural salesman, and he was a thief. Observation 1, I noticed he kept checking his phone, a ridiculously expensive custom-skin Samsung. He wasn't scrolling, he was waiting for a message. He looked tense despite the smile. Observation 2, Marie wasn't there. That was good, but also slightly worrying. She was the one who sent the threat. She was the one who knew I was coming. I waited for 2 agonizing hours until the crowd started to thin out. A handler, a young man with green hair who called Thomas Sensei, was trying to pack up his display materials. Thomas was drinking another massive can of Monster Energy. This was my shot. I walked up to the table, forcing my face into a neutral, slightly confused expression. "Thomas?" I asked, putting emphasis on the first syllable, my voice slightly trembling. He looked up. His eyes, which were kind of tired and bloodshot, widened for a split second, then narrowed into that unsettlingly calm look he always used when denying things on our Zoom calls. Well, Christian Flores, what a surprise. You're a fan of classic platformers. I would have pegged you for a spreadsheet simulator kind of guy. He even had the audacity to chuckle, reaching out to shake my hand. I kept my hands firmly by my side. "I'm here about Apex, Thomas. And the 6:15 a.m. data transfer." The handler paused, looking between us awkwardly. "Hey, Sensei, should I get you some water?" the green-haired kid asked, sensing the shift in temperature. "No, Donnie, it's fine. Go pack up the peripherals," Thomas said smoothly, but the smoothness was forced. He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Look, Christian, I know you're upset. Losing a job is tough, especially when you're managing things at home." He brought up my mom. The rage surged, hot and immediate. "Don't you dare talk about my mother, Thomas. That threat Marie sent, that was criminal. You knew I was coming because you are watching me. You are tracking me." "Why?" Thomas sighed dramatically, leaning back. "Christian, you're projecting, you're stressed. Look, Marie is a kid. She gets emotional. She shouldn't have sent that, and I apologize on her behalf. But listen, Apex was a dead end. Look at me. I'm doing what I love. You should do the same. Why are you clinging to a job that paid you, what, $75K a year to babysit spreadsheets? It paid for mom's medications, Thomas, and it was an honest living. Unlike selling confidential client data for $40,000, I spat out, keeping my voice low but intense. Thomas glanced around. A couple of lingering fans were starting to watch the drama unfold. He smiled at them, the practiced Old Man Gamer 68 smile. "That's a very serious accusation, Christian. And if I recall the server logs, the data transfer was initiated by your user profile, right? Christian Flores 43, that's rough, buddy. Looks like you got greedy and tried to cut us out. I was helping you remotely. You asked for my secure login credentials because your iPad was glitching. I trusted you." I practically yelled the last word. Thomas scoffed. "Oh, Christian. You have full access to a multi-million-dollar data repository, and you just hand over the keys because an old man with a Twitch stream says his iPad is glitching. Who is the clown here? You have been running compliance for 20 years and you didn't see that as a red flag. Come on, you're smarter than that. You were setting us up, weren't you?" This was the core of their defense. They weren't denying the theft, they were simply saying I did it, and they were the poor, unsuspecting consultants I tried to burn. Worse, based on the server logs and my own idiotic trust, it was a totally believable story for Greg and Apex Security. You are a convicted felon, Thomas, I said, leaning closer, practically whispering into the microphone I was pretending was just my phone. Wire fraud, New Jersey Correctional Facility, 6 years, Apex knows, Greg knows. Thomas' smile didn't falter, but his eyes went cold. Apex knows I was a consultant who disclosed the messy parts of my past, Christian. I told them I had a gap in employment due to a long family illness. My lawyer smoothed everything over with HR before I ever started. That's why I was only a consultant, not an employee. Marie, however, is a different story. I felt a surge of adrenaline. Marie is an identity thief. She used a fake SSN. She fabricated her entire history. Exactly, Thomas confirmed, his voice dropping slightly. Marie was the asset, young, charming, digitally brilliant. Perfect for data migration, but she was always the weak link. She was never going to pass the final enhanced FBI screening. We knew that. That's why we needed someone clean to finish the job. He paused, taking a slow sip of the monster. And that clean person was you, Christian. You were perfect. Dependable, overworked, stressed about your mother, the kind of person who needs $40,000 badly enough to look the other way but too scared to do the dirty work herself. I didn't steal anything, I shouted, forgetting about the lingering crowd. Thomas stood up, suddenly towering over me, projecting that old man gamer 68 persona to the crowd. Then why are you here, Christian? Why are you flying across state lines to harass an old consultant at a gaming convention? You're starting to look pretty unhinged, man. Maybe lay off the Adderall. He threw that line out there, knowing it would stick. The fans started murmuring. He had instantly turned me into the aggressor, the crazy guy trying to attack a beloved internet personality. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The recording was running, but all I had was him confirming that Marie was a weak link and that I was the clean person they needed. Nothing that explicitly stated. We used Christian's login to steal data and frame him. I had one last card to play. I needed Marie. Where is Marie, Thomas? Does she even exist? What's her real name? I demanded. Thomas smiled, but this time it was a genuine, cruel smile. Marie? Oh, she's celebrating, and she's far more clever than me, Christian. She used burner phones, ghost identities, and proxies. Good luck tracking that TikTok influencer. He then did something completely unexpected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his Samsung phone. He held it up, showing me a text message thread. It wasn't just a text. It was a live location share, active for the next 3 hours. The location was a high-end condominium in downtown Chicago, about 10 miles away. You want Marie? Go get her. She's waiting for me to finish my set, Thomas said, his voice dripping with condescension. But don't be late. She has the rest of the cash and she's not known for her patience. Be warned though, Christian, she's not nearly as gentle as me. She knows how to fight dirty. You might want to hire a lawyer before you go knocking on doors. He deliberately gave me Mari's location. I realized it instantly. He wasn't giving her up. He was sending me into a trap. He was trying to get me to escalate the situation further, to show up uninvited at a private residence, which would definitely get me arrested for harassment or trespassing, thereby ensuring I couldn't testify against him later. He wanted me to be the criminal, not the victim. I looked down at the phone in his hand, memorizing the building name, the Zenith Towers. Then I looked back at Thomas. He was just watching me, waiting for me to take the bait. I'm not going to jail for you, Thomas, I said, my voice finally steady. Then go home and take care of your mother, Christian, he countered, shrugging. Some things are more important than a compliance career. I walked away. I didn't say goodbye. I walked past the green-haired handler, past the Sonic cutout, and out into the miserable Chicago rain. Update, Saturday afternoon, 3:00 p.m. I'm sitting in a terrible, overpriced coffee shop across the street from the Zenith Towers. I didn't go home. I didn't call the police. I didn't go straight to Marie's apartment. I called Sarah. He gave me her exact location, Sarah. It's a trap. He wants me arrested, I told her, the stress giving me a massive headache that even 3 Tylenol couldn't touch. Of course it's a trap, Christian. You can't go in there. You are going to get tasered or something, Sarah warned. I need the money, Sarah. And I need the original data, the physical storage device they put it on. That's the only way to prove I wasn't the one who initiated the transfer, I said, stirring my lukewarm cappuccino. Think about it. Thomas admitted Marie was the weak link who couldn't pass the final background check, and he confirmed they needed a clean resource me to finish the transfer. That's the best evidence I have so far, but it's circumstantial. If I can find the external hard drive or flash drive they used for the 6:15 a.m. transfer, it will have their unique MAC address and location stamps. So you're staking out the place? Yes, and I'm not going in alone, I told her. Remember Greg's nervous breakdown look when he found out about Thomas's felony and Marie's fake identity? He knows his career is toast if this gets out. He's desperate. I had called Greg, my boss, the one who panicked from my burner cell phone, which I bought at a gas station. I didn't tell him about the threat to my mother, and I definitely didn't tell him I was in Chicago. I simply told him I had a lead on the physical location of the stolen data. Greg, I said, keeping my voice cold and businesslike, I have located the principal culprit and the final location of the data. If you want to stop this from becoming an FBI case and a massive class action lawsuit against Apex, and I know you do, you need to meet me in Chicago now. He stammered something about logistics. I cut him off. This is not a negotiation. You have a private jet account. I will text you the address. You have 4 hours. If you aren't here, I walk into the nearest police station with the server logs and all the documentation about Thomas's felony and Marie's identity fraud, and I will let the chips fall where they may. You hired the criminals, Greg. You are culpable. TBH, I was bluffing my face off, but it worked. Greg is a coward. He hates messy paperwork almost as much as he fears losing his corner office view. He arrived 2 hours later in a black town car, looking miserable and rumpled in an expensive travel suit. He met me in a nearby dark bar that smelled faintly of stale beer. Christian, what in God's name is happening? The board is meeting remotely on Monday. This is a disaster, Greg whispered, gesturing frantically for a scotch. I didn't order anything. I just stared him down. We are going to the Zenith Towers. Marie Fitzgerald is there. She has the data. I need you to do two things, Greg. First, you are going to witness everything I do, and second, you are going to call Apex Security and tell them to have a local, discreet investigator ready to sweep the place for hardware the second Marie leaves under the guise of an asset recovery search. We can't let her delete that drive. And if she doesn't leave, then we make her leave, I said, feeling that cold determination solidify into a dangerous plan. Thomas gave me the key to the trap, Greg. Now we turn it into our weapon. I showed Greg the text conversation with Thomas, the one where he mocked me for my trusting nature. Greg's face went from pale to a disturbing shade of green. He couldn't believe his anchor employee was being framed by the consultants he was supposed to supervise. This is all on you, Greg. You ignored the red flags from HR. You panicked and leveraged the only clean resource me to finish the job. You put corporate security over professional due diligence. Now you're going to fix it. I gave him the address. He called the security team, his voice shaking. The confrontation, Saturday night, 7:00 p.m. I left Greg sitting in the town car a block away, ready to make the asset recovery call. I walked up to the Zenith Towers. It was one of those aggressively modern glass buildings, the kind of place Marie would absolutely aspire to live in permanently. I had the recording running, my phone in my back pocket. I had no idea what floor she was on, but I knew Marie was expecting me to make a scene outside of Thomas's booth or maybe show up to her apartment uninvited, demanding answers. I decided not to go to her apartment. I needed to lure her out where I had a witness, Greg, in the car and where I could avoid a private trespassing charge. I went straight to the lobby concierge. Hi, I said, trying to sound like a very annoyed, very corporate resident. I'm Christian Flores. I'm waiting for Marie Fitzgerald. She was supposed to meet me downstairs, but she's not answering her phone. Can you just call up to her unit and let her know I'm here? The concierge, a bored-looking college student, checked his screen. Unit 3402, one moment. He called up. Marie answered quickly, which meant she was waiting by her phone. I could hear the conversation faintly. Yes, Miss Fitzgerald, there is a gentleman named Christian Flores here to see you. Marie's voice, though muffled, was instantly recognizable, breezy, confident, and deadly. Christian, tell him I'm expecting him. Tell him to come on up. That was the mistake I needed. She didn't panic. She invited me up. She had a plan, probably involving calling the police on me for harassing her or worse. I got into the elevator, feeling the adrenaline pumping so hard I could hear my pulse in my ears. 34 floors. The elevator music was a horrific smooth jazz rendition of an old pop song. I felt like I was in a terrible 90s thriller. When the elevator doors opened, Marie was standing there, leaning against the hallway wall, looking absolutely flawless. She was wearing a silk robe and holding a glass of what looked like sparkling wine. She smiled the same disarming smile that convinced me she was a go-getter. Christian, you actually came, she purred, sounding genuinely amused. Knew you wouldn't be able to resist. Did you enjoy the convention? Did Thomas give you my little invitation? I stepped out of the elevator, keeping the phone recorder running. You threatened my mother, Marie. Her smile dropped. Oh, that old woman? Honestly, Christian, you're 43. Why are you still living with your mommy? That's what makes you such an easy target. Always worried about the $1,247 rent. Always worried about the next electric bill. Predictable. Thomas and I knew you would break when we added stress to your personal life. Where is the data, Marie? I demanded. The data is safe, very safe, she said, gesturing towards the open door of her apartment. The inside looked like an Instagram dream, minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Come in. We can discuss a settlement. You were actually pretty useful, Christian. We could cut you in on the next one. There is no next one, I said flatly. I'm not interested in blood money. I want the original data repository. The external drive, where is it? Marie laughed. It was a cold, high sound. Oh, you want the physical evidence? Sweet Christian, you really thought this was like an old video game where you beat the final boss and get the prize, didn't you? This is corporate espionage, darling. We don't leave external drives lying around. The original drive was wiped and shredded 3 hours after the transfer, and the fragments were tossed in 3 different bins across the city. I felt the blood drain from my face again. If the physical drive was gone, the MAC address trace was gone. I was back to square one, my login, my IP address, my fault. You really covered your tracks, I said, trying to keep my voice even, thinking about Greg sitting in the car, waiting for the asset recovery team. Of course we did, she said, walking into the apartment and letting me follow. We studied your audit protocols for 2 months. We knew exactly how to make it look like an inside job, and you played right into it. The moment you handed over your clean credentials, it was over. She walked over to a wet bar and poured herself another glass of champagne. You know, the funny thing is, Marie continued, not looking at me, Thomas and I tried to be nice. We knew the background checks would fail, but we kept working hard, trying to finish the transfer before Apex initiated the final screening. But when Thomas got nervous about the wire fraud conviction showing up, he decided we needed to speed things up. He created a minor discrepancy on my end, the fake SSN. He knew HR would flag me. Then he created the bigger, worse discrepancy on his end, the prison time. I stood frozen in the pristine living room, absorbing the pure logic of their villainy. You failed the background check on purpose. Yes, exactly, Marie exclaimed, turning to face me, clearly thrilled by her own genius. We forced Greg's hand. He saw the fire Thomas/Marie and needed a firefighter, you. Greg was so desperate to save the contract, he bypassed protocol and asked his most trusted, completely vetted, easily controllable manager to finish the job quietly. We knew you were too stressed and busy to double-check everything. We knew you trusted Thomas. It was perfect. You set me up as the fall guy, I summarized, trying to get her to say the crucial words, we are the thieves. No, Christian, she said, taking a sip of the wine. We set you up as the only plausible culprit. Think about it. Why would a convicted felon and a kid with a fake SSN suddenly develop the technology and access to steal $40 million worth of sensitive client data? It's not believable, but you, the 43-year-old manager stressed about his mom and needing cash who suddenly finds out his colleagues are frauds, panics, cuts them out and steals the data himself. That's compelling. That's what the investigation will find. Greg knows the truth, I said, trying to push back though my hope was draining rapidly. Greg is terrified, Marie corrected, putting down her glass. Knows he is the reason you got access to the data in the first place, by leveraging your credentials to finish the job after the background checks failed. He is covering his own ass. He's already telling Apex Security that you went rogue after the termination notice. I hadn't even thought about that. Greg was protecting himself. If I went down, he was safe because he could claim he fired me the minute he discovered the data failure. I needed Thomas to admit his part. Where was the connection? You and Thomas have been working together for a long time, haven't you? The whole consultant thing, the Twitch streaming, that's all a front, I accused. Marie laughed again, walking closer to me, enjoying my obvious distress. Thomas is my father, Christian. Thomas Murphy is not his real name, obviously. He legally changed it after he got out of jail. His previous name was Thomas Fitzgerald. Marie Fitzgerald, get it? I stared at her. My brain was genuinely struggling to process this. The 68-year-old streamer and the 21-year-old social media darling were father and daughter. They were a team. Why the elaborate fake identities? Because Thomas's conviction made him a liability and my identity was too clean. A recent university grad with no history is easily checked. We needed two different narratives, the charismatic newcomer and the old, reliable expert. You managed both of us perfectly, Christian. You truly did. She paused. You're a good manager. Just a terrible judge of character. That stung more than the threat to my mother. It exposed my weakness, my focus on survival and logistics. Mom's bills, the spreadsheet deadlines meant I completely ignored the actual humans around me. So the Venmo request this morning, the $15 for Starbucks, that was a way to confirm you knew my flight time, I realized. Ding ding ding, Marie clapped once. We have access to an IP tracker. You booked a flight, we saw the location ping from your corporate laptop. You should really stop using that thing for personal stuff, BTW. We just needed to confirm you were serious. That Venmo request, it was a psychological trick. We knew you'd either be furious or scared. Either way, you were on the hook. You want me to get arrested, Marie? I stated, finally understanding the trap completely. She smiled. I want you to be quiet, Christian. You have lost your job. You have lost your reputation. Your mother is secure for the weekend. Go home, take the loss. We already deleted all records of our external communication with you. It's your word against the official server logs and Greg's testimony. You don't have a case. She started walking toward the apartment door, clearly signaling the end of the conversation. Thank you for coming, though, she said, opening the door and gesturing me out. I enjoyed our little project. I looked at the doorway, then back at her. I couldn't leave. I had spent all my money, risked my freedom, and faced down this horrible duo, and I was leaving empty-handed with only a voice recording that wasn't definitive. I had to be stupid. I had to go off script. You know what's funny, Marie? I said, suddenly feeling calm. Thomas mentioned that when your 68 records get dusty, he said it was a highly specialized, proprietary consulting gig in London. But I looked up the New Jersey correctional facility he was actually in. They have an excellent digital education program there. Wire fraud, data theft. Your dad learned how to do this job in prison. Mari's smile finally vanished. Her eyes flashed with genuine anger. Get out of my apartment, Christian. No. I'm not leaving until you admit on this recording that you and your father, Thomas Fitzgerald, conspired to steal corporate data from Apex using my login credentials after setting up the failure of your own background checks. Say it, Marie. I am calling building security. You are trespassing, she warned, pulling out her phone. This was the moment. The plan was dead. I had no evidence. I had been completely defeated. I did the one thing I never, ever would have done as a compliance manager. I decided to make a scene, a big one. I took the phone out of my back pocket and threw it on her pristine glass table where the voice recording was clearly visible. I stepped back towards the open door. Go ahead, Marie, call security, call the police, but guess what? I already told Greg, my boss, that I found the physical location of the stolen data and I'm currently confronting the person responsible. He's sitting outside right now with an asset recovery team waiting for you to make a move. I was bluffing about the asset recovery team being right there. They were only supposed to come after she left, but I didn't let her know that. Marie froze, her hand hovering over the dial button. Her composure finally cracked. You told Greg you were here. Yes, and he knows everything, Marie. He knows your background check failed, he knows about Thomas's prison time, and he knows you were both brought onto the project under false pretenses. He knows I tried to report it to him yesterday, but I got cut out by the two people he didn't vet properly. I paused, letting the fear sink in. He just needed confirmation that the data was here. He needed a witness. I pointed to the phone on the table. You just admitted everything. You said Thomas is your father, that you failed the background checks on purpose, and that you set me up as the plausible culprit because I'm an easy target. That's all on tape, Marie. You call security and Greg calls the police. You both go down for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and grand larceny, and this time you won't get off with just a name change. The sheer terror on her face was satisfying. She knew I had her, not with physical proof of the drive, but with a full recorded confession of the conspiracy. You are such a clown, Christian, she hissed, grabbing the phone off the table. She didn't try to delete the recording, she just threw the phone hard against the floor. The screen spiderwebbed, but the light was still on, which meant the voice recorder might still be functional. Then she ran past me out the door and into the hallway. Wait, where are you going? I yelled. To save the rest of the money, she screamed back, running towards the stairwell, not the elevator. I ran after her, but I stopped at the top of the stairwell. I needed the phone. I picked up the shattered iPhone 14, praying the recording had survived the impact. I didn't follow her. I ran back into her apartment, pulled out my other burner phone, and texted Greg one word, now. Then I walked over to the windows looking down at the street 34 floors below. Marie Fitzgerald was about to have a very bad night. Update Sunday evening, 10:00 p.m. I am back in my apartment 3B near the garbage chute. My mom is asleep. The certified nurse is sleeping in the guest room. I am drinking lukewarm chamomile tea and staring at the ceiling, feeling an exhaustion that goes bone deep. The confrontation worked, but not in the way I expected. When Greg got my now text, he immediately called the asset recovery team, who, because they were working under the threat of a massive lawsuit, arrived at the Zenith Towers within 10 minutes, accompanied by local private security. Marie didn't make it far. She ran down 34 flights of stairs, carrying a massive, expensive designer tote bag. When she hit the lobby, she realized she was trapped. Greg's security team was already there, blocking the exits. She managed to text Thomas mid-stairwell scramble because 10 minutes later I got a highly aggressive phone call from Thomas Murphy, 68M, aka Thomas Fitzgerald, demanding to know what I did to his daughter. I kept the call brief and professional. She confessed, Thomas. She confessed the entire plan, your involvement, and the fact that your father and daughter. It's recorded. Apex Security is currently with her and Greg is talking to the Chicago PD right now. You might want to lawyer up. Thomas hung up on me. His Twitch stream went dark a few hours later. NGL, I bet the Old Man Gamer 68 fanbase is having a serious moment of reckoning right now. The Apex security team didn't find the physical hard drive. Marie was telling the truth. She and Thomas were too smart to leave that crucial piece of evidence lying around. But they did find the massive designer tote bag Marie was carrying. It contained $80,000 in cash, several burner phones, and 5 different fraudulent identification cards from various states. The cash was the down payment they received for the stolen data. The cash, the multiple IDs, and the fact that she was fleeing the building after an unscheduled visit from me, the supposed culprit, was enough for the Chicago police to detain her on multiple fraud and attempted evasion charges. The conversation I recorded, despite the phone being shattered, was miraculously intact, and it was the nail in the coffin. Marie confessed under pressure that Thomas was the mastermind and that they used my credentials to cover their tracks. The aftermath, the messy middle. Greg flew me back this morning. He was ridiculously contrite, treating me like I was a fragile glass doll. Christian, I want you to know how truly sorry I am, he kept repeating. You were right, I should have trusted my instincts in the initial HR report. I panicked. I let my desire to save the contract override my common sense. Apex is not firing me. They are doing the exact opposite. They are giving me a promotion. I am now the interim director of enhanced compliance, reporting directly to the board on security protocols. They have also offered to pay for a team of specialized lawyers to handle my potential litigation against Thomas and Marie. Why the promotion? Simple. Apex is covering their ass. They need a pristine, trustworthy face to present to the state and federal investigators when they inevitably swoop in. And that face is mine. The guy who, despite being framed, flew across the country and successfully secured a confession and recovered some of the funds. They are turning me from the fall guy into the hero. It's completely cynical, but honestly, I needed the job and I needed the lawyer money, so I accepted. Thomas Murphy, Thomas Fitzgerald, is currently on the run. He apparently emptied his bank accounts and disappeared from the gaming convention shortly after my call. The police have issued a warrant for his arrest based on Marie's testimony, citing multiple counts of wire fraud, grand larceny, and conspiracy. They are tracking his various burner phones and his enormous Twitch follower base, hoping someone will spot Old Man Gamer 68. Marie Fitzgerald, Thomas's daughter, is in police custody in Chicago, likely facing serious jail time. The charges against her are staggering. And me. I have a new job title, a shattered iPhone, and absolutely zero trust left in humanity. 2 weeks later, Thursday. It's been 2 weeks since the Chicago incident. My life is still chaos, but it's a slightly better funded chaos. The new salary increase is already helping pay down some of the mountain of debt I incurred dealing with mom's rising medical costs. The firm's lawyers are handling everything, which means I don't have to stress about the details, just sign documents. The investigation is ongoing, and my name is technically cleared on the server logs. Apex IT produced an internal report showing that Marie and Thomas had utilized a sophisticated packet injection technique that spoofed my MAC and IP addresses, which required my login but allowed them to transfer the data remotely and make it look like I was operating from my home office. It was high-level stuff. Thomas learned a lot in prison, apparently. I am dealing with the emotional wreckage. Sarah is a saint. She helped me go through all my digital footprints, change every single password, I mean everything, and run anti-spyware on every device I own. We even put duct tape over all the cameras in the house just in case. I realized something profound and deeply painful during all of this. I was so laser-focused on being the reliable anchor, the predictable, boring 43-year-old making sure the compliance spreadsheets were perfect and the bills were paid, that I allowed myself to become a vacuum of genuine human connection. I trusted Marie and Thomas because they were focused, hitting deadlines, and making my professional life easier. I didn't see the red flags because I didn't look up from the bottom line. I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to process that the charming 21-year-old asking for $7 Starbucks every morning was a professional identity thief, or that the old guy streaming video games was a convicted criminal. I was too busy surviving to notice I was being played. I had lunch with Greg yesterday. He was still jumpy, but he actually looked me in the eye for once. He admitted that the only reason he didn't immediately turn me over to the authorities when the logs pointed at me was because Sarah, bless her soul, again walked into his office 15 minutes after I left for Chicago and told him, loudly and aggressively, that if he didn't help clear my name, she would go to the Wall Street Journal with the full story of his negligent hiring practices regarding Thomas' known felony. So I owe Sarah my life, literally and professionally. I'm still getting Venmo notifications, believe it or not. The ghost of Marie Fitzgerald is hard to shake. I got another request this morning for $3.50 with the note, "For the ginger ale you drank while obsessing about us." They are still messing with me from custody. I just block and delete. It doesn't sting anymore though, now it just looks pathetic. The hardest part is the caregiving. The nurse I hired, Rosa, is amazing. She showed me that relying on myself 100% of the time wasn't sustainable or healthy. I'm now splitting mom's care hours with a professional service. It costs more, but I'm sleeping better and I'm not up at 4:00. I'm scrolling through Instagram looking for clues. I'm trying to date again too. NGL, it's terrifying. Every time a new person suggests grabbing coffee, I immediately start mentally running a background check on their entire employment history. I told my therapist this, and she suggested that maybe I could focus on finding a partner who isn't involved in corporate compliance or high-stakes data migration. Good idea, Doc. I still drive the beat-up 2018 Honda Civic. I still worry about money, but the promotion means I have a fighting chance now. I've gone from being the predictable anchor to being the guy who chased down criminals across state lines. It's an interesting narrative shift, even if the promotion comes from the deep cynicism of my corporate overlords. I'm going to survive this. I already did the hardest part. I stared down the sociopath who wanted to steal my life and frame me for it. I faced the man who wanted to send me to jail, and I won. Not with a perfect plan or a grand cinematic victory, but with sheer exhausted determination and a lot of help from my incredibly aggressive friend Sarah. I'm starting to realize that the most dangerous thing about being totally dependable is that people stop seeing you as a human and start seeing you as a tool. Marie and Thomas saw me as a clean set of keys. Greg saw me as a controllable anchor. Now I need to figure out how to be Christian Flores, 43M, interim director of enhanced compliance, caregiver, and sometimes emotional wreck, without becoming someone else's tool ever again. Yesterday, I bought a new non-corporate shirt. It's light blue. I am thinking about starting a new tradition. Every time I block Thomas' new burner accounts, I drink a full glass of water and remind myself I'm in control now. It's small, but it's a start. We'll update if Thomas ever gets caught and I have to testify at a federal trial. Wish me luck. I'm going to need it.